Good morning, it's Brian here over at Expert Dojo. We are on the Art of Startup War again. The objective of this show is to bring to the investor community the very best startups out there and make sure that you get the same opportunities that we have had. I have been privileged and lucky for Expert Dojo to have been able to invest in RediCare, and Stephen, who's on the show here with me. And for the next 30 minutes or so, we're just going to look at why this is such a great investment opportunity. We're going to look at the background of Stephen. We're going to look at RediCare. We're going to look at the genesis of RediCare and the ideas behind it. And we're going to look at where RediCare is going in the future and why we at Expert Dojo believe with our money that this company is going to become a unicorn, and not just a unicorn. Actually, that's not even fair to the company. We believe that this company is going to become an instrumental change in the world for so much good. And at the same time, investors are going to make a ton of money. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Brilliant. So tell us about the genesis. We're going to, as we go through the podcast, I want to take you through the hero's journey. So we're going to look at like the tough stuff you went through, and then as that drags through to like the beautiful future that's coming. But tell us first of all, where did the idea come from? When did you suddenly realize that there was such a huge problem? And if you can share what RediCare is while you're doing that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. RediCare is a digital therapeutics firm focused on cardiometabolic disease. We treat pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, obesity, and PCOS. The genesis of the project came out of a deep friendship I have with a cardiologist with just an unbelievable belief in prevention and lifestyle therapy as a first-line treatment for chronic disease. So I guess maybe 6-7 years ago, Niall had outlined this monster challenge in terms of drug therapy not necessarily working, people getting sicker, and lifestyle was the real solution. So the challenge, I guess, was could we build a digital therapeutic, a lifestyle platform to scale the delivery of lifestyle therapy to millions of people and reduce the risk of cardiometabolic disease.
And this is, you say that so eloquently, but we're talking about look, I want you to think of like the biggest cliff in the world with the sheerest face on the cliff, and the changes that are required in people's lifestyles is such an importantly but difficult thing to actually put in place. And just to get your response on this, I think of, back in when I was a kid and I was in my mom's kitchen and things were so simple. Like we didn't really have preservatives. We didn't really have sugar thrown into everything. I'd have a bunch of potatoes thrown on a plate. I might have some peas thrown in there, maybe a little bit of meat. I'd have my food. Even the sweets didn't have all of the junk that they have in them today. But this awful lifestyle that we're living I don't even think it's our fault in many cases. I think it's been thrust upon us by just a lot of folks that should know better. And it seems that everything has got sugar in it. And you give one example which always just blows my mind, which is that a bowl of cornflakes, which you would think is your friend, like how can a bowl of cornflakes be bad, has got 17 or the equivalent to 17 spoons of sugar. Can you maybe talk a little bit about why this timing is so important and maybe what's happened in the world to bring us to this abyss that we're in right now?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, lots of folk think Weetabix or cornflakes is a healthy way to start your day with breakfast. But, when you digest, a bowl of cornflakes, it's the equivalent to 17 to 21 spoons of sugar.
Wow.
When fully digested into the bloodstream. And that's frightening. And most people do not realize that. So I think, if you figure over the last 40 years, the evolution of processed foods, full of sugar are the prime drivers for the explosion in diabetes and all other chronic diseases. So I think it's largely lifestyle and diet related. And, it's everywhere. It's so bloody convenient to, pick up some takeaway food, some processed food. When you and I grew up, Brian, we had whole foods, single ingredient foods on our table, and with low in sugar, really good for you. And once that starts to change, the obesity curve just went exponential, and the diabetes curve.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be so shocking for everybody listening to this, because they may have felt, oh, well, diabetes, isn't that for just a very small percentage of people? But actually, we're starting to see kids developing diabetes and very severe diabetes just because of the eating habits that they've developed, and not a few. This obesity and diabetes and just general terrible health situation, this is affecting not just millions of people, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, right?
It's measured in billions. I think there's about 1.5 billion people with a chronic disease issue in the world. There's about 28 million people with type 2 diabetes in the States. And when you look at the raw data coming back, about 85% of the world's population now have a metabolic sickness. So it's everywhere. And largely, the root cause of this is poor lifestyle choice and bad dietary advice.
And people, this is not getting any better. This is going to get a heck of a lot worse before it gets better. When was the moment that you realized, Stephen, drugs are not the solution for this? Because it's just incredible, really. If we think about just the way we've been dealing with this up to this point, the food companies, the F&B companies have been pumping more and more sugar in, right? Our bodies have become more and more intolerant to the sugar that's coming through. Our health has been deteriorating because of this. Some people argue that sugar is worse than heroin in many cases. And at the same time, our solution to this, up to you, has been, well, we should give drugs. Like that's how we deal with this. Like we put this drug into your body, which has destroyed your entire system. And what we're going to suggest that you do is, not openly, but what people what they do is they just keep on with the same lifestyle they had before, and then they have drugs, which makes very little difference. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, when you think about it, if you're a type 2 diabetic and you eat some cornflakes, which is the equivalent of 20 odd spoons of sugar, and then you take some tablets, maybe a metformin or insulin to control the blood glucose levels. That's a bit like if you had an allergy to peanuts and you just use your EpiPen all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes very little sense to be taking foods that are very high in carbohydrate and sugar, and then take a medication to manage the symptoms. So I guess from a clinical point of view, and medications only control the symptoms or manage the sickness. They do not address the root cause of the problem.
And in some ways, it's almost encouraged to continue doing what you were doing before, because what happens is, if we go back to that cliff analogy, is people think, well, actually it's being managed through drugs, but it's not. It's being managed until you die. And that will happen way sooner than it was supposed to happen before, because your body can't handle this for a sustained period of time.
Correct. We're managing the sickness, but we're not addressing the problem. We're not fixing the issue. So what I found, that the first eureka moment when we started treating our early patients in our employees in a corporate setting, was just the profound movement I saw in the data, where folks' HbA1c was reducing, their lipid profiles were improving.
Well, I don't actually, Stephen, I want to save this, right? Because I feel so privileged to have invested in your company, because I feel in some small way we're a part of just great good being brought to the world. And I absolutely love some of those early results. Before we get there, I want to just start on the hero's journey, on the place when you started it out. You had the moment, you realized, okay, the way it's happening right now is not working. It's a disaster. People are dying. And when the world is going to fall into a terrible place unless we come up with an alternative solution. Your alternative solution was lifestyle management. Can you talk a little bit about how you started that and how you built it? This is not an inexpensive thing to build. And by the way, you did it during a pandemic, which is the most difficult time. So I want to start by looking at the difficulties of what you created, and then come out the other side and then start looking at the beautiful, magnificent thing that you have now created in the world. But let's start with the hard bit. Take me through some of the pain of that initial part of the journey.
Yeah, I guess when we started the company, we did an enormous amount of research at meta-analysis level to understand the science around what would be the best therapeutics and all of the modalities that might go into a digital offering. So we built a platform. We started to engage with patients onboard them, treat them, measure the clinical outcomes. So we were very clinically led from the start. In fact, we start with the science, the endocrinology, and we build the software around to automate the process. So build the platform, rigorous clinical analysis, refine the product. We even went as far as measuring what folk ate in some of our studies to understand exactly what somebody can eat to drive a reduction in HbA1c, improve lipid profiles, reduce weight, improve blood pressure. So we set out to be multi-indication from the get-go in terms of treating the whole spectrum of cardiometabolic disease, not just one indication. So that was a strategy led by Niall and Andy from the beginning, clinically. So we put enormous effort into defining, building the therapeutic, validating it, to get it to a level where doctors would prescribe it and refer it to their patients.
And then that must have been hard. Because
that takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, you're starting it from nowhere. Like you arrive in this space. Doctors have been doing the same thing for an awful long time. You would almost argue in some ways they were numb to even new solutions to it because they had managed it in such a similar way for so many years. How did you begin? Like, how did you even start? You used your own money. You have to have used your own money at the beginning. And then how did you convince a team of people to come around you that actually by focusing on lifestyle that you could make a sustainable difference?
Yeah, I guess we seed funded the project ourselves and were the early seed investors. We brought a great team together, a passionate team, and it was almost like a mission. And we got a lot of input from endocrinologists, primary care physicians, cardiologists, nutritional science folk, and data science folk. We had a great small team together. And when we rolled out to primary care physicians, it was meet them one by one, detail it, get them to refer a couple of patients, show the effects, and that really brought us a lot of credibility. When we recently went into the UK during the pandemic, we worked with one primary care centre, focusing on the most complex, multimorbid polypharmacy patients. And we showed over a 12-month period the profound outcome you can get on really chronically sick patients. And that's paving the rollout now for our expansion into the UK.
That's huge. And then, so what were the first times? So you went through the difficult period, you're building it yourself, you're telling everybody, we have to change this, we have to fix this. You're building that brand that you're pushing out, you're creating the team, you're then building on top of the team to make it better. And then you go into your first place. What was the first patient that you noticed a difference in? Do you remember the individual person?
No, I'm a quant guy. I remember the spreadsheet with lots of people that showed that statistically it was significant.
And so, what did you see? What did the spreadsheet show you?
The spreadsheets showed clinically significant reductions right across the spectrum of cardiometabolic health. And we published that. I remember the study quite clearly, it's on 26 patients. And it showed reductions in weight, blood pressure, and we got that published in the European Society of Cardiology. So that gave us huge encouragement to go and build a better product, iterate more, and we kept iteration of the product on the back of clinical data all the way through to where we are today, where we're now capable of treating the most complex, multimorbid polypharmacy patient.
And what specifically was done with the 26 patients that you brought to take a difference like that? Go on, yeah.
We onboarded them onto the platform, brought them through our lifestyle therapy. We measured their weight, blood pressure at start and end, and lipid profiles. And we brought them through the whole platform where we educated them on the root cause of their condition. We gave them evidence-based dietary advice, and we supported them through that 16-week initial journey.
And then what were the results that you saw? So, because I know you said there was a reduction. Was there anything dramatic that you started to see with those people that even you didn't expect?
Our hypothesis, we would get the results, but we exceeded what we expected. And I guess consistently over the product development journey, we have seen clinically significant reductions in weight, triglycerides, blood pressure equivalent to antihypertensive medications. And in terms of HbA1c, we are seeing effect that no drug can deliver.
And
And if you think,
go on, yeah.
and if you think about the full spectrum of cardiometabolic disease, you're not treating one thing, you're treating the whole spectrum. And we're getting reductions and improvements right across the spectrum with the one therapeutic.
And this must be huge. I'm sure the NHS in the United Kingdom are looking at this. They have got to be spending, because all of our kids are eating cornflakes or Weetabix or something else. Like, this is something which is going to become, we think this pandemic is bad. This is going to be a heck of a lot worse. So you have got to be looking at health systems who literally are thinking, if we don't deal with this with something other than drugs, we won't be able to afford to provide the healthcare that's expected from our populations within a 5 or a 10-year period. Like, literally, we will not be able to exist.
Brian, it will break the health systems unless we deal with this problem. They will not be able to afford to manage the problem.
Amazing. And then so since that time, they've adopted you. And that's what's so beautiful about this journey. This journey is not so much about, this was really tough as an entrepreneur and I had to fight through and it was awful and nobody believed me. It's like everybody wanted you to be right from the very beginning. The teams come in. It's very easy to build a mission around because there's specific data that was being produced all the way through. Nothing is deniable. And every single step of the way, it's almost worked perfectly. Like, sure, the pandemic has slowed some things down because we haven't been able to get out there quite as much, but the actual results have been consistently showing more and more improvements within these patients.
Correct. Absolutely. And as we evolve the product, we're now treating the most complex of patients. And, if you think about it, many doctors would say that long-term diagnosed type 2 diabetic don't respond well. Well, they actually do. You know what? They also want to get rid of their type 2 diabetes and improve their health. So, and the only solution is lifestyle in terms of root cause treatment.
Yeah. And then speak to us a little bit about how the lifestyle treatment works. So they're obviously going to be getting detailed advice on what they should be eating and what they shouldn't be eating. But talk us through that over a 16-week period, what it looks like. From the very beginning, you weigh me, you get my blood pressure. I'm like, I know exactly where I am. What then happens on the Tuesday and the Wednesday and the Thursday? How do you keep me on track? Because that's the hard thing, right? If you're not consistently in their face.
I don't think you need to be consistently in their face. I think you need to educate and build health literacy. That's the foundation. So if you look at a doctor refers a patient onto RediCare Control, the first thing we do is we educate the patient. We get them to understand the root cause. And it's a little bit like Netflix for chronic disease.
Yeah.
So
right.
if it's all about making it super easy for that patient to deeply understand why they became type 2 diabetic, why they are overweight, why they are hypertensive, and they understand the root cause and why lifestyle is the problem and what changes they need to make. That's fundamental. And when we talk about engagement, we talk about how much of their health education they're consuming. Have they swallowed the digital pill, which is health literacy? That's number one. So we want that patient to binge watch our education, just like you'd binge watch something in Netflix. So now that's about an hour and a half of structured education tailored to the conditions we're treating for that patient. So if a patient is type 2 and hypertensive, they get served education around these two conditions. And all that education is clinically validated with supporting research. So it's clinically robust. So that's the first thing we do. Next thing, we encourage that patient to eat the right foods. Okay, so you start there, and they're never hungry. The protocol is, involves very little effort. It's about swapping out really poisonous, toxic foods, refined carbohydrates, for whole, single ingredient foods with moderate exercise, walking.
And I think, Stephen, most of us don't realize that the average person probably has between 50 and 100 spoons of sugar in a day.
Yeah, it is staggering.
I mean,
when you look
seriously,
at,
What are we doing here? It's like 50 to 100 spoons of sugar. Like, just think about it, just for a second. I just want to paint a picture for everybody here. And even if you want to just take
It's a
this
big bowl.
from the sublime to the extreme, right, to the ridiculous, then get a big old bag of sugar, just a big old bag of sugar, and then just start taking one spoon at a time and see how much is left in the bag after you've hit 100 spoons of sugar. And that's just today. That's Monday. By the way, it's now Tuesday afternoon. You need a new bag of sugar because you just ran out of sugar. Like, that's what we are doing to our body. For the love of God, like, how can our bodies possibly deal with this? And I think when you say this to people and you're saying, look, you don't have to go down to zero straight away. It's okay. We understand it's going to be difficult. There are going to be withdrawal symptoms and all those types of things. This is a drug like any other drug out there. But how about we just do 62 spoons today? Like, how about we start there? And then we show you, and then 40 and 30. And by having that awareness of what's good and what's bad, then even sometimes they might have a little breakout. But if you build for them the routine and the structure of eating healthily and make that food nice, you change people for life. And you can literally add, this is what I loved about you at the beginning, you're adding 20 years to people's lives. Like that, it's just that simple, right? Forget the pain and the misery of actually being really unhealthy for a large period of your life because you just haven't been educated on these things. But you're adding years onto folks' lives.
Yeah, and you're adding years to people's lives for sure, but the quality of life is going to be much better. And this is the RediCare Control therapeutic. It's not about a diet. There's no calorie restriction. Folk are never hungry. They eat as much as they want as long as they eat the right stuff. Okay, so it's devilishly easy to implement. It's common sense, and we talk about a time will come in the future where eating refined carbohydrates will be seen as toxic as smoking. I think you got to put it into that context.
Yeah, absolutely, incredible. And so if I look and see where you're going, I'm thinking every school should have this. Forget like obese, diabetes, people who've got health conditions, which, by the way, all of those people have been like so severely exposed during COVID, then that's become something which is even a more talked about subject. I'm just talking about like a normal 12-year-old kid in school. And you say to the 12-year-old kid, look, here's the deal. You're going to have 100 spoons of sugar probably every day for your entire life. You're going to hit not 22, 23. You're going to be fine because you're going to be running around the sports field. You're not going to notice. You're going to hit 34. Right? And as soon as you hit 34, these are your 17 friends who are not doing this to their body, who actually have got a great routine. This is what they're doing with their kids. This is what they're doing with their families. This is where they're going. This is how they run. This is how fit they are. This is you right now. So if you don't fix this right now, because they don't need to get to this place where you have to fix them, right, Stephen?
Absolutely not. And I think when we think about treating large populations, countries, millions and millions of people, everybody, not just the sick folk, should be given access to structured health education by their primary care physician, and it starts with the parents. So then the kids don't become obese. Right now, there's an enormous amount of kids in the States being diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, right? So they're getting, and that's becoming rampant because of the amount of sugar that's being consumed by kids and adolescents. So it starts with education. Everybody should have access to structured education around how to live a healthy lifestyle free from chronic illness.
Yeah, so I want to make this real simple for everyone. You have a great team here. You have a team that are proven. The team already have customers. There's already great revenue coming in on a monthly basis. The systems, the healthcare systems, it's not just that they like this or they may use this or they may use this on the roster. They are desperate for this. Not only has it been successful over in the UK and Ireland, but we're now bringing this over to the US, which is going to be the biggest market in the world, bar nothing. You've heard the impact that it makes on the population. If you're an investor in earlier stage startups and you want to make sure that your investment makes a difference, this is just a no-brainer. It was such a no-brainer for me. It's like, of course we want to invest. Of course we want to put money in here. Of course we want a company like this to be able to break through. And I've worked with the team for the past couple of months. It is an incredible team that's breaking through here. So Stephen, talk to us a little bit about how much money you're raising, what that's going to do for you over the next year or two. And then let's finally share everybody your email address so people can contact you afterwards.
Yeah, sure. We are raising $600,000 as our seed investment, and that the sole purpose on that is to get us to a run rate of about $1 million a year or 100K in revenue by about Q2 2022 next year.
Yeah.
We did about $36,000 in revenue in just this month gone, and that allows us to add to the management team and do Series A very shortly.
Yeah, fantastic. And seriously, for a company like yours to be able to have even got to the monthly revenue that you're at with the minimal investment that's actually being put into the company is absolutely phenomenal. The fact that you're looking for such a small amount to be able to keep on building is great. I see the risk profile as being really small because this is not to build product or get to market. You are in market. This is to dominate the planet and start creating a movement to fight back against this awful situation that everybody's faced in. So even if you're not an investor, actually, I'm going to put a different appeal out on this podcast. I don't care if you're an investor or if you're not an investor. If you have kids, if you know people who have kids, if you even like children, you need to get behind this. You need to be referring Stephen and his team over to healthcare institutions everywhere, no matter where they are. You need to make sure that if there are people in this space, doctors or anybody else, they know about this so they can start incorporating this into their treatment. This is absolutely proven. It absolutely makes sense. And I think it's a great investment for everybody going forward. So how can everybody contact you, Stephen?
Yeah, email is stephen.egan@redicare.ie. Stephen.egan@redicare.ie, and that's Stephen with a PH.
Yeah, and EGAN. And then look,
EGAN.
and then anybody can always contact me, Brian at Expert Dojo, if you have any questions at all. But I want real push behind this company. Let's make this thing a unicorn. Let's make this thing something that changes the world forever and reverses just the craziness we've had over the last 20 years. And Stephen, thank you for allowing us to be investors in your company and for all the wonderful things that you're doing for our kids.
And thank you for the support, Brian. Appreciate it.